Hi, today we're going to be talking about the age of exploration and colonization. What were the motivations for these European explorers? Okay. Some of them were attracted to the east for silks and spices. They had a lot of difficulty in trading with some of their geographically close neighbors there. The Islam and Christianity, they didn't get along too well at the time. And in 1453, the Byzantine Empire fell to the Turks and it kind of sealed off the spice road. Another desire was for wealth and adventure. Some people were just greedy and wanted to get their hands on as much money and gold, silver, valuables as possible. Others were just out for adventure. Religious zealots, also out to try to save souls at the time, were another motivating factor for some of these explorers. They wanted to spread the word of their religion. Okay. In summary, they were usually out for one of three reasons: gold, glory, and God. Improvements in navigation which aided them in their adventures. Better maps. By the mid-14 and 1500s, these explorers had gone and they had mapped it, not to the extent that we have now where they could be exact on locations, but they had a pretty good idea where they were going and what to expect when they got there. They could follow the coastlines, use rivers, use primitive compasses. They also had better ships. Square sails and new hulls allowed them to travel more safely and quicker. They were also heavy enough now to carry cannons and weapons in case there was going to be another ship out there that would attack them. They also used the astrolabe. It was a magnetic compass, and you could use this as a navigation tool. They also sailed by the traditional stars. Knowledge of wind patterns, they knew when to expect the winds. Certain times of the year could direct them in certain directions. The Gulf Stream and the wind in the ocean patterns. First, the first great Portuguese explorer was Prince Henry. Then we'll get into the Spanish, the French, and the English. Portuguese explorers. Prince Henry in the 1460s was looking for trade and a military ally against the Muslims. One of the main traders that was Portuguese was Diaz. He made it to the Cape of Good Hope along the southern coast of Africa. We have Vasco da Gama, who went in search of Christians and spices, and he arrived in India. In 1510, the Portuguese flags were in Goa, India, Macau, and China. Spanish. They believed there had to be a shortcut by sailing west. Their idea was that they could get to the east by going west. Columbus went west in 1492. He arrives in the Caribbean and thought it was the Indies, thus naming it the West Indies. Magellan is the first to successfully sail around the world, or is given credit for it. East and west is divided. The Pope drew a line between Spain and Portugal at this time as to who would get what. Pattern of contact. Okay. Contact begins by trade. And if trade didn't work or if it became exhausted, it'd go to armed conflict. Europeans usually won because they had firearms. They had cannons, they had guns, and besides the obvious fact that they were more deadly, they also had the effect of being psychologically scary. They set up trading partners. Some would stay behind to protect the partners, and some would go back to Europe. They would make alliances with local leaders. Dutch and English were less apt to become involved with the culture and religion of the native people that they were trading with. They developed mercantilism, which was material from the colony. You'd buy and finish your products, and were formed in Europe, and there was a trade between the different areas. Slave trade. Portuguese were one of the first to trade with Africa. They saw them as servants, and they were sent to South America, primarily Brazil, to work on plantations. The Africans were less susceptible to European diseases than the Native Americans that they had tried to subjugate earlier. Millions had died from the different diseases that the Europeans had brought with them, but the Africans were less likely to catch these. Death rate was still high, though, between 13 and 30% just on the trip from Africa to the Americas. Spice trade in the East Indies. Okay, it's often wondered, why were spices so valuable? The big thing there was it made their food more palatable. Food at the time would not have been very tasty. It would go bad quickly. There wasn't refrigeration, and anything they could get to spice it up would have been greatly appreciated. Portuguese are again the leaders here. Spain goes to the Philippines and stays there actually until about 120 years ago, 1898. The Dutch set up the Dutch East India Company, which competed with the British East India Company as one of the major trading forces at the time. Both dominated the East Indies and India. Impact on the world by European contact. Okay. The purpose was to serve the homeland, whether it was slaves, fur, cotton, fish, spices, tobacco, gold, or silver. Colonies improved the lives of Europeans greatly by taking these things back to them. In the Americas, there was more intermarriage by the Spanish, Portuguese, and French. They were more integrated into the Native American society. Disease was devastating to the Native Americans. Measles, influenza, and smallpox were introduced to them and devastated their population. Africa, completely dominated by Europe. There's only one independent country, and that's Ethiopia at the time. Southeast and Asia, French in Vietnam, British in Burma, Spanish in the Philippines, and Dutch in Indonesia. So as you can see, Southeast Asia is carved up amongst these European powers. In India, the French and British compete. The British went out, and they stayed there until 1948 as a power. In South America, the Spanish dominated. A few others joined in, French, Dutch, British, Portuguese, but South America is predominantly dominated by the Spanish. I hope this has been an aid to you, and I would encourage you to check out other Clintondale videos. Thank you.